Welcome back, guys. This is Jason, KM4ACK. Today, we're going to talk about why I choose to run the Raspberry Pi with my ham radio setup. Stick around and we'll get right to it. Hey guys, before we get to today's video, I've got to give a shout out to these three gentlemen. They're my latest patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, I'll leave a link to Patreon down in the description below. So a couple of days ago, I received an email from Douglas. And Douglas is not real familiar, I don't think, with the Raspberry Pi from reading through the email. And he was curious why I chose to use the Raspberry Pi. And he wanted to know how that compared kind of to a Windows laptop. So I thought we'd take a few minutes today and go through that. Now, some of the things that he is interested in per his email, he's interested in emergency communications, ARIES, working portable, and then just general all-around use with a ham radio. So let's kind of take a few minutes and break that down today. So one of the things he asked was, what can the Raspberry Pi do that his Windows laptop can't do? Honestly, not a whole lot. There are a few things if you really want to get into some specialized use cases, such as the GPIO pins. It's going to be hard to do that with a Windows laptop. Now, why might we want to use the GPIO pins? Well, we can use those for a couple of different reasons. One of them that comes to mind is if we wanted to operate a relay. So let's assume that we want to connect a relay up in line with our radio to be able to turn it on and off. We can wire that up in line with the power of the radio and then connect that relay to the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi. Now we can write a script, Bash or Python or whatever language you choose, and we can turn that radio on and off. So maybe we want it to come on every morning at 6 a.m. and go off every night at 10 p.m. So that would be pretty simple to do with a inexpensive relay and the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi. Now, let's take that a step further. Let's say we want to monitor our battery voltage. We can feed that information back into the Raspberry Pi as well over the GPIO pins. Now we can, say, monitor the battery, and when the voltage drops to a certain point, we can shut the radio off using the relay that we were talking about a second ago. This could come in really handy if you're working on solar and batteries alone. Let's say it's a cloudy day. The battery drops to a certain level, you can have the Pi shut off the radio using the relay until the solar panel has time to charge the battery back up. Then when that voltage on the battery comes back to a certain point, we could turn the radio back on. So we kind of automate that and not have to constantly monitor that ourselves. Another big advantage of the Raspberry Pi over a traditional, say, 15, 17-inch laptop is weight. You start weighing out a larger laptop like that, let's say a 15-inch, you're probably talking about 4 or 5 pounds of weight. Whereas when I'm running the Raspberry Pi and using the iPad mini as the keyboard, the mouse, and the monitor, I'm weighing in at less than 2 pounds. So I've got half the weight of a traditional laptop when I'm running with the Raspberry Pi setup. So maybe that's not a big deal to you. Maybe you're driving right up to the area that you're going to operate from. Weight might not be a huge consideration for you. But if you've got to carry that radio setup any distance, shaving a few pounds off of it can never hurt. Next up, let's talk about the cost. An inexpensive laptop's going to cost us, what, $300 to get a decent one? I can probably build 2 of these setups complete. Now I'm talking the Pi itself, the SD card, the GPS dongle that I need, the sound card. I can probably build all of it for $100. So I could build 2 of these, have a backup, and still have $100 left over for that new antenna I've been eyeing. Another big thing with me and Windows, it drove me absolutely mad with Windows 10. You start to do something, you power it up or go to power it off, and Windows decides that it needs to update. How long are we going to have to sit here and wait for Windows to complete an update that we may or may not need at that particular moment? Maybe we just want to jump on the computer and catch a rare DX contact using FT8. Or maybe we just need to send a quick email using Winlink. But Microsoft knows better, and they want to update the machine right now. Maybe you're lucky this time, you only got to wait 10 minutes. Maybe you're not so lucky and you got to wait 30, 40 minutes before you can even use your computer. I've never had my Raspberry Pi do that to me. It updates when I tell it to update, and I like that a whole lot better. Probably the biggest advantage for the Raspberry Pi, though, is power consumption, or the lack thereof. Now, if you're working from a shack, commercial power, and you don't have to worry about power consumption, this probably doesn't matter to you. But if you're working portable and you're running on a battery and relying on solar to recharge that battery, the Raspberry Pi has a big advantage over a full-size laptop. The Raspberry Pi will draw roughly 300 to 400 milliamps from a 12-volt source. Compare that to a laptop. Now, I will admit, if you're running on laptop batteries, then you're not pulling anything off of your radio battery. But when you have to recharge that laptop battery, you're going to be pulling somewhere around 18 to 19 volts. It's what it's going to take for input. And it's going to take 2 to 3 amps to recharge that battery. So when you look at that and compare that to the Pi is a big winner in that department. Now, what's some of the drawbacks of the Raspberry Pi? Well, honestly, probably what keeps more people from moving to a Raspberry Pi than anything else is the word Linux. It's a scary term if you come from a Windows environment, and a lot of people won't even try when they hear Linux is involved. But guys, Linux has come a long way over the years. If you grab the latest Buster software, which Buster's just a flavor of software that runs on the Raspberry Pi, if you grab the latest version and you get the desktop environment to go with it, you're going to get a very familiar interface to Windows, something that's pretty comparable to Windows. So you're going to get the start button. You're going to have a menu list that you can go through and highlight and click, and the application opens. Now, a lot of ham radio software does require some manual installation, but that's why I put this channel out there. I want to help guys getting started with the Pi and make it as easy as possible as we can to get this thing up and running. So guys, don't let Linux scare you away from the Raspberry Pi. Yes, there is a learning curve to it. There's absolutely no denying that. But it's well worth taking the time to learn when you get so many advantages from moving to the Raspberry Pi. All right, guys, we will see you on the next video. Until then, 7-3.